7:20 a.m. So I think we should keep going. Item number 1 on the agenda is approval of the agenda and the introduction of any late items.
I have one late item, which is on table staff update, supplementary document for 6.1.
Could you say it again, please?
Is that this? Yes.
Yeah.
The emergency program coordinator update is to go with item 6.1 on the agenda.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry, I don't know what my volume has gone. Can you turn yourself off? I can't turn the volume, my volume's normally right there.
Okay, thank you.
That was an emergency.
Handled by the coordinator.
Sorry, yeah, same thing.
Easily. Okay, so we have only one item, and this is this table at to item 6.1.
Yeah.
So could we have a
I move adoption of the agenda as amended.
Second.
all in favor? So the amended agenda is adopted. Adoption of the minutes of the last meeting, December the 10th, 2019. There's a recommendation that the minutes of the EPEC meeting held December 20th be adopted.
December 10th, right?
I'm sorry, December 10th, 2020.
Yeah.
2019.
So moved.
Actually, I said it was 2019, shouldn't
It is 29. Yeah, your agenda's, yes, should say.
Noted.
So that's just a step up there.
Yeah,
It's not a problem. Could we have,
Jim's moved, I'll second.
all in favor? Motion carried.
Where's Dana?
He wasn't able to attend today.
So no public members are present, so item 3, there's a no comment. Number 4, the action items is a review of the action items from the previous meetings.
He's not again.
Okay, you wanna read that, please?
Yes. Sure.
Oh, Dennis isn't here, so he.
Well, number 1 was completed. Oh, sorry, no, that's Bishop Hill. I can't speak to number 1. Number 2,
Sorry, which
So,
number one was?
regarding cost estimate for the top of Bishop's Hill.
This is
So that's, council had directed staff and we're just waiting to hear.
This is to
No, this was a motion.
improve the
that-
top of the hill to allow for emergency access at Bishop's Hill.
Yeah.
We don't have that info yet, so.
So,
that's-
do
So
I
we
mean,
need
our-
our hope on that?
Patrick just started.
I don't
Right.
remember if it came. So resolution 18-429, yeah, with everything that's going on, I would just label it as in progress because there hasn't really been anybody to pay attention to.
Okay.
Can we just leave number 2 on there as in progress as well?
Yeah.
Yeah.
number 2 is the business continuity.
Yeah,
And that
I
would
got
be-
started last couple months ago.
So that can be carried forward. Councillor Morris, Beach
Well,
and
I sent him an email before Christmas and did not get a reply. I was actually going to follow up with somebody else. And I forgot to.
Just leave it on there.
So we'll just carry that forward.
Yeah, leave it on there.
Number 4, that's the natural hazard maps that were done for the OCP. I brought them in on a memory stick because they were way too big to email. So I don't know.
This can go on the server. I guess.
Yeah, maybe
Do you have a
that's-
stick here or just?
Sorry.
I now have those maps. I shared them with planning. I didn't circulate them to the committee, but I can, or send them to you to
Is,
circulate.
you know, would it be worth going in that Parks Drive that we have, a little library thing going on?
Well, no, if they're hazard maps,
It can go in the emergency program drive. We'll store
Okay.
it somewhere on whatever.
Okay, I'll change
Yeah,
the
if you
subject.
could just, because I have passed it on, I just couldn't.
were
Yeah.
they part of the consultation documents for the OCP? In which case I probably haven't.
I don't think they were. They were mapping work that Dave Whitty got Marie Genet to do,
Oh, okay.
or Marie Genet volunteered
So that's
in our
quite
hand.
old, isn't it?
Hmm?
That would be quite old.
2010.
Yeah, but it relates
Okay.
to flood hazards and rock fall hazards and stuff
Okay.
like that,
Yeah.
as I recall.
And if we're talking about flood hazards, there's also the mapping on the province's website, which I think you and I have already gone back and forth about.
So that will be in some website, it'll be in a server and what, access to a website?
Is it public?
No, the hazard maps will be through a website. We'll figure out a way to get you all access.
Okay. Yeah,
I just couldn't
that's right,
technically do it.
Yeah.
It's too big.
totally, understand. Number 5, the CWPP.
Provide the recommendations from the CWPP.
They're supposed to send you their ideas on what recommendations should be actionable. It's an item for today.
And that's
Okay.
the Community Wildlife Protection Plan, is that what that is?
Wildfire, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's on the agenda.
So we'll just,
Yeah.
until we talk about that.
So I'll call that, I'll take that off.
Yeah.
Talk about fire risks and protectiveness of forest. Is that on the agenda for today?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
Yes, okay, so we'll wait on that. Strategy for addressing, yep, we tried to connect on that and weren't able to, so we'll discuss it today.
so.
Number
Well, yeah,
7.
and I'm not sure that 6 doesn't relate with some.
They're
Yep, she's putting them all together.
I did receive input on the draft evacuation plan, thank you. I'm working with the consultants this week to finalize that. Consider what to keep confidential and which would be of value to the public. Yes, that's underway. 9.
Okay, so 8 can come off, it's done.
Yeah, I think so.
And underway.
And I think 9 can be removed as well, because that's happening.
Yep.
Okay.
10
Because you're
is,
finalizing now.
yeah, 10 is completed. 11 was done, thank you for sending me feedback. Next meeting, yeah, so
Can you
today,
remind me what CEPR is?
sorry,
Yeah.
community emergency program review.
We
Right,
put that
thanks,
on the
yeah.
agenda today.
Yeah. Okay, that's gonna happen today. 13, yeah, thank you for sending me comments, that's done.
Okay.
Very much all done.
So we have a whole number
Hold on.
completed there.
Calm
Yeah.
down.
Number 1 is underway, so that can just,
Turn the page, Bill.
sorry,
Okay.
page 10 of 20. The committee clerk, nope.
Me.
The council clerk, no, corporate officer is updating the fire prevention bylaw with the help of the fire chief.
Oh, okay, I brought my old one, and I was gonna talk to whoever about that, so we can chat after. I've got a draft from before.
And then I can't speak to the,
I'm still doing, the most of it was in the advisory design, the
Right.
design guidelines.
and I've been connecting with,
APC, because they're reviewing,
not the
No,
committee
the
directly,
ADC.
but the staff.
Yeah, but
yeah,
Yeah.
with Daniel, yeah. So, and there's, I think out of that, though, we should ask the conservation development policy, that John, the APC and John Reed, not John, David Hawking are developing. We haven't seen that here, and we probably should.
Which one? Conservation development
Yeah.
policy?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want me to ask to have that happen?
Or maybe you could just send around the report and the PowerPoint that was done for the council meeting would probably be. What other committees he's come to?
David Hawking came to
You came to
Parks,
the-
Trails and Greenways, he came here.
You came here, yeah?
Yeah.
Last meeting?
No, there's 2 of them.
Oh, two
The
companies.
climate change
The
strategy.
climate change strategies he
You
came
came
about.
here, but
But he's working with the APC and they're developing something called the conservation development policies. In other words, clustering houses in the middle of the trees.
oh, totally different.
Yeah, so, I think that one has more relevance from that has relevance from emergency planning and access. It's something that Bruce would like, be good to ask for comments on.
Okay.
Because I know he was concerned about some of the things they had to do in other places to create better access once.
So what's the
developments
process
are
for
in.
formally reviewing that policy?
Well,
So,
yeah, the APC brought it to council, and then David came and made presentations. I think he made a presentation to the Economic Development Committee, but this is probably the only committee they might not have come to.
yeah, and I feel there's not, firm process about things going laterally from committee to committee.
Oh, and we
But
didn't.
I have gotten CAO has said that actually committees do tend to work in silos, so if we wanted, I know Fire Hall and this committee,
Yeah.
Fire Hall committee have sort of spoken to each other, so if you wanna just, I've got an ABC meeting.
Well, the issue with this committee and the fire hall committee is there's huge cross population.
Yeah, I'm just saying though, like if you can, I have the okay that you can
So
go.
somewhere that the APC,
So just, I've got a tracking sheet, so the conservation development policy has gone to the environment committee, finance, parks and trails, and transportation.
yeah. And I don't know why I didn't include it and get it for here when we had it at council. Anyhow, the council presentation of PowerPoint would probably be, or the presentation of PowerPoint that went to one of those committees.
Okay, I'll send that around.
Yeah, for starters. And then I guess, because we won't be meeting again.
Is that a file you can send? Is it
Yeah,
small?
yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Conservation development to EPIC members.
And that would be just for information, or?
I guess maybe for information and if there's concerns and comments and questions, then send them to Jen.
Have you seen it, Aaron?
No.
So you might have some comments.
Oh, you haven't, they didn't involve you in looking at? Okay.
You can,
I think this would be the committee.
Yeah.
okay. Good. Okay.
No.
So then we're through. Action items from the last week
Yeah,
are
we're-
completed.
Now we're at 5.5.
Okay.
Oh, that's the logging one.
So move to item 5.1. Fire risk and protectiveness of forests, including selective logging.
I can speak to this a little
Can you
bit.
speak to that?
Yeah. There's been, the information that I've been looking at, and I think I may have forwarded some of it to Jen, is that, for example, I'll read from here. This is from a recent article, a recent paper. Newly published study found that old growth trees in the Pacific Northwest was up to 3 times, old growth forest in the Pacific Northwest was up to 3 times more likely to burn at low severity, not high. And so this is like the big trunks rising, right? Somewhat, and here's a quote from the article that of the author presenting this. It's an academic paper. Somewhat to our surprise, we found that compared with other forest types within the burned area, so this was an area of fires in the Pacific Northwest, I think in 2017 or something. Compared with other forest types within the burned area, old growth forests burned on average much cooler than younger forests, which were more likely to experience high severity fire. How this actually plays out during a mixed severity wildfire makes sense when you consider the qualities of old growth forests that can limit severe wildlife ignition and burn temperatures, like shading from multi-layer canopies, cooler temperatures, moist air, and soil, as well as larger, hardier trees. So partly I wanted to bring this forward, and so there's a link to the paper which I've provided to Jen.
I'm sorry, I don't think I received that from you.
Oh, sorry.
What's action item that? Because the first page that you're looking at,
Yeah.
I believe I sent to
You
you.
sent
Yeah,
this to
you
me.
sent
And then
Yeah.
I don't think I've received
You
it.
got that off Hydrants website?
That's from our colleagues at
Powell River.
River. Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
But I would like to see that. So.
okay, sure, I'll send this to you.
But
Sorry,
I
I thought I
guess,
had.
I don't think anybody's suggesting we're going to log the old growth. I thought the selective logging in there was to remove the diseased and what would go up like a torch.
I don't know if we should even use the word logging. I
No,
think that
it's
just
it's,
causes like a visceral response.
I was only referring to this study, which was referring to how old growth forests are actually protective, and how I didn't see that reflected in the current Fire Smart information that we've been seeing from the Kelowna area.
Gotcha.
And
they've got very different
exactly.
trees up there.
So that's why I was bringing the
Okay.
Pacific Northwest, could you, let me finish please, bringing the Pacific Northwest info including this new paper, and thinking that thinning and clearing smart treatments by homeowners and agencies might be contraindicated in a near old growth. So we can see portraying the old growth as protective rather than risky to be near.
Yeah.
And that was more in terms of how do we roll out Fire Smart on Bowen, and how do we maybe challenge some of the myths around all big old trees are bad, and because they're not. And the idea of shading in the cooler temperatures in the moist air and soil, larger, hardier trees could be portrayed as protective rather than dangerous when we communicate with the public. So that's why I wanted to bring this here, and I will forward this to you, Jen. But that's what I wanted to get to. And then, meanwhile, Jen had also found this from our folks at Powell River, which is a coastal Fire Smart thing that I hadn't seen at the time.
Well, they custom built that, and actually we've received funding just recently. We got news to do the same thing here, so I would like to incorporate what you're saying into the public communication.
Sorry, what funding did you get?
We got additional Fire Smart funding, and part of the activities for 2020 include creating a Bowenized sort of Fire Smart document. Bowenized. Coastal forest, tailored.
Because there's a few things, I'll just continue my presentation here. Because Powell River's in a slightly different ecosystem than we are. So we're in this coastal wet maritime hemlock, coastal western hemlock, very dry maritime, and DM, which I forget what that is, xeric maritime. And anyway, it's just a little different. And so I don't know what exactly that means in terms of differences, except that I don't think, like on the right-hand side here, it says,
Not everybody has that document.
Do you want to send it to me and I can share it with the people?
I can't send it to you right now because I don't have my computer. So
You send
okay,
it.
It's
I
okay.
can do
It's
it
okay.
now.
No, it's okay.
continue on.
I can just make a copy and put it on the screen while you're talking.
okay,
Just a minute, I found Ken's.
Scan it to myself. Bring it right back.
Here, do you want the electronic version? I'll send it to you right now.
Okay. Sorry. Who are you?
Stephanie?
Stephanie, yeah.
Oh, now what? I uploaded the new iOS thingy and,
iOS, the terrible word.
and it's got all new, here it is. You've got it, I just sent it.
It's a coming step.
just action leads to action.
I like moving around anyways.
Yeah, I got it on my screen.
So we will have a look at it in a minute.
Yeah, so I guess I'm.
This is where we talk about this, right?
Yeah, so I don't think anybody's suggesting we remove old growth. I think the concern is, and I'm going on a walkabout with, it's Blackwood, right? Bruce,
Yeah.
yes. I keep wanting to say Blackburn.
Blackwell.
Blackwell, okay.
Is he coming to the island to do a walk around?
He's coming to the island to do additional presentations to the community.
Yeah.
A walk around?
No, I'm sorry, I thought he was part of something else, but these are the we had him last year, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we paid him as a
Yep.
strata to come and spend
Oh,
a couple
okay,
of hours
okay.
with us. And walk down, because we were, and he basically indicated there's some dead trees around and things like that and stuff that's in the process of dying, that if the little bits on the edge of the road caught fire, it would go up. So that's the sort of thing he was talking about removing. The same as what happened in the interior. What really burnt and caused part of the problem was the pine beetle killed trees. Because you can drive down, you know, when you were driving up the highways in the interior, you could see this red of the dead brown trees. So, you know, at a certain point when they're dead, they start to decay and then they're not an issue, other than me. But if you've got, and all these little spindly things that are dying on the sides of the roads and stuff, those are the fire hazards. So
I'm not really sure what the purpose of this discussion is. What are we trying to, what's
I-
the outcome here that we're trying to achieve?
I thought we might be looking at this
document.
and so I was presenting a little bit of information that brought me to my comments that I'm prepared to make, or I can just hand this to you for.
Do you have any other comments you
Yeah.
want to make about it?
And should this maybe be like an offline discussion? I don't think the committee needs to necessarily provide input as a committee for that public communication piece. Is this something we can work with sort of as a group outside of the committee structure to make sure that it aligns with everyone's?
Sure, I'm still waiting
Understanding.
for some info and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I just got news of the funding, so work on creating this sort of Bowen
Let's
specific
defer it
document
to the next
hasn't
meeting.
started yet.
Let's defer it to the
Okay.
next meeting.
I'm just
Okay.
wondering if it
If-
needs to be a committee issue, like, wouldn't
Let's
we just work on
Okay,
this?
hold a second.
Yeah.
Just tell me this document, you're going to take it and do what with it?
We're gonna create a similar document for Bowen that sort of talks about the coastal rainforest and how some of the fire smart recommendations that are applicable in Kelowna are not necessarily applicable here, and what
Yeah.
that could mean for homeowners
Yeah.
and landowners here.
All right, so we just take then as information that's been provided to us and input to you in preparation of this
And what I would like
Bowen
to do
specific
is
plan.
meet with Sue Ellen offline and connect with you and
Sure.
get all that info.
Okay,
Sounds like a plan.
send to Jen and
The
Liz.
second page.
Okay, so can you blow that up? You see, when you, oops, sorry. So what I think I was getting at is you see how Bruce, this is the two different, so they've removed the dead and dying.
Yeah, we get that.
Stuff that'll burn, so that's what selective logging is to me.
Oh, okay.
I'm not using the word log.
Oh, so that's what's, okay.
Yeah, that's
I
what
think
selective
this is,
logging is.
okay,
So I think what we
Trimming
should
and
call it,
thinning.
yeah, and
Okay, that
getting
would
rid of
be-
the dead
okay.
stuff, yeah.
So we need to be careful of the definitions.
So I see
Trimming and
That's-
thinning instead of
Removing the dead,
yeah.
instead of selective logging.
the dead and
dying,
dying.
dead, dying
Dying
trees,
disease
not.
trees, yes,
You
yeah.
asked like helicopter logging.
No, no.
Okay.
So
And just
maybe
to be
logging is
really
not-
clear, at no point in any part of this program have we suggested that people take down healthy old growth trees.
Trees.
Like we never have, it's not written anywhere, it's not being said
I
verbally.
think it's just
not
because
going
this
into
term had come up in our meetings, I was going, whoa, let's clarify this, and I think we just have, so
And I
that's.
So I think we're good then.
Brian,
Any
Can I
other
just be really
comments?
clear?
Pardon?
I just want to be clear that when we finish these discussions, that we come out with an action item that makes sense to people.
Yep.
And that there isn't confusion.
The
So
next-
what I
next
have
item
is,
is that the information has been received, provided by,
Well, why
no, but
don't you-
that's, and Sue Ellen and Jen are meeting
and their meeting,
to include information from this brochure in the
In-
creation of a Bowen brochure.
a Bowen specific brochure.
and I think we probably
Correct.
want to work with Bruce
mm,
on that. because he's-
And Bruce is
Well, I
last
won't be
meeting.
the only point of, you know, and I'm
No.
sure.
No,
Is
this
Bruce under contract to us?
No.
No, we have to pay him by the hour, but we not got a grant,
but I can probably sneak this into some of the time I've already
Yeah,
got
and he had some of this in his presentation.
So what would this document be called if you had to give
I'm
it
calling
a?
it the BC Fire Smart brochure.
No,
This
this
would
would be
be
the
called
Bowen Fire
Bowen
Smart.
specific.
Oh,
The
no.
Bowen Fire Smart
This one
brochure.
is one I'm making.
This
Yeah.
one that you're
Looking
looking
at.
at is Powell Rivers. It's a Powell River Fire
So
Smart
we
document.
received the Paul River.
So there's gonna be a Bowen Island. Fire
I'm calling it
Smart.
the Bowen Island Fire Smart material.
There you go.
Yeah, okay.
Cat Regional District is Paul.
And Jen, do you
Sorry,
have
sorry.
a,
The Fat Regional District is
do
Paul.
you have a target date, timeline
No, I do not at
Change
this
the
time.
names.
Soon, ASAP, because
this year?
fire season is upon us, absolutely, this year,
Okay.
yeah.
Great. Thank you. Well, I think that's been very good. We've clarified some issues there and had a pretty good discussion. I think we all understand where we're going here.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense, and thank you for bringing that forward, Sue Ellen.
Okay.
Can I get Bruce's last name, please?
Blackwell,
Thank you. And his title?
doctor, Mr.
No.
He's a registered forest,
He's-
an RFP, and
Yeah,
he's a
forester
consultant.
and consultant.
Blackwell and Company, or something like that.
Blackwell and Associates.
Blackwell and Associates.
Thank you.
Okay,
He's
So
been
that was
working
Adam,
with Whistler and North Van and on there.
yes, he specifically with Lister where he recommended I think a separation or a cut line right around Lister.
Fire break or something.
Okay. Okay, let's move on. Was that 5-1 or 5-2?
That
That
was
was
5-1.
Okay, 5-2.
Oh, 5-2 is the wildfire one?
Oh, my name's beside this. So I believe this keeps rearing its ugly head. We're talking about updating the community wildfire protection plan through grant funding either later this year or early next year. And I guess I'm trying to recall the discussion that led to this being back on the agenda,
We're
but
trying to make some recommendations actionable for council, so
Yeah.
the communities can go through all the recommendations in this plan and say which of the priorities we can get council support on.
And which ones have sort of either been, when I went through it, reworded or in a way been done, but not because we were dealing with this plan. Okay, let me open it up, I've scribbled all over it.
So hold on a second, maybe I'm wrong. I've got, actually, in the minutes from last meeting, it was in reference to Councillor Hawkins' climate change strategy. Provide recommendations from the CWPP for the climate strategy plan. So maybe specific recommendations from this that will go into the climate strategy.
Okay,
or like support the climate strategy. Is that what we're?
I guess was a discussion about the climate strategy involved fire. So look on page 5 of the agenda, of this agenda package. I think we might need to do a bit of inter-meeting touching base, because the meetings are so far apart in this group.
Well, the problem is we forget what was on the to-do list.
Exactly, yeah.
So you need to send out the to-do list.
Like 2 months, like you're right in between the meetings.
Good idea.
good idea.
I thought
So-
I made notes all over this.
So page 5, it said, yeah, so we're talking about the climate change strategy, and I'll provide recommendations from the CWPP for the climate strategy plan.
So he was
what of
looking-
this do you want included in the climate strategy plan that you reviewed in December? And is there a list of recommendations?
Just go to page 10 or
Yeah.
11 of the agenda.
Yeah. Page 11.
Okay,
And there was a summary of recommendations in the actual community wildfire plan. Yeah, right on this one. This plan was done
2007.
2007. There it is. By B.A. Blackwell and Associates Limited.
So,
And we're not doing very well on
Hey, some bits we are, to be
Some
honest.
bits,
And we've
yeah.
come a long way in this for 3 years since
Yeah.
I came on scene here.
Yeah.
So I took number, expected cost low, staff time, like number 4, enhance their existing website, community fire risk current fire danger, proactive services. So we're, that's sort of what the Fire Smart program is doing.
I think we've come a long way
And
towards
this is
that.
signage, there's no Chamber of Commerce anymore. Number 8 was one that fits in with the previous discussion. The number 3 one, I'm wondering if that fits in David's, investigate the potential, because we had we asked them to split his topics into 2, remember, take drug planning and wildfire planning and make it 2 topics, so I guess we have to add something to our topic. Potential for working with local developers and,
that was important.
yeah, the Fire Smart show home or,
I'd like the new fire hall to be that.
yeah, no, definitely, but I'm thinking is that an easy win to, it's really hard to educate or get the builders and the developers to think about that or the architects when they're designing things, so that we don't create the problem with something new.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
I suggest that since 2007, there's now a whole online world of videos and slideshows and illustrations and our own materials that we're working on now. And I don't think that the idea of a show home necessarily, a fire smart show home or a fire smart demonstration, like a permanent one, is needed, not when we've got workshops happening and, you know,
I
Blackwell is visiting
wasn't,
neighborhoods.
I wasn't suggesting a show home, I was taking it further and saying somehow can we just get them to incorporate these things in their planning and development.
So Jen, you point?
I think that if we're gonna encourage the residents and the businesses to undertake these activities, that we need to look at our own house first and make sure it's in order. If we're, you know, allowing the vegetation to grow over and into our structures and yet encouraging people to, no, I'm just trying to
Can we
speak to
let
her
her
point.
finish, please?
Her point of not wanting to have a demonstration building, I feel that every municipal building should adhere to fire smart principles and practices. It doesn't have to be a particular specific building demonstrating that, but they all should, especially if we're gonna ask other people to do the same thing.
So,
So that's what
the
the,
point is that there would not be a show home around. I think that concept is out of date.
Yeah, no,
That, which we all agree, so
I was
you're,
taking it to the next
I
stage.
think you were just.
Because
So
it's under communication and education, and I take your point,
So
Jen.
you're suggesting that,
so perhaps like maybe to scope this process, why don't we just skip communication and education entirely? Like, we're doing a lot of that, a lot has changed since 2007. Why don't we get into like vegetation management or some of the sort of harder, I don't know.
okay, I agree with you, that's true.
Okay,
Because
because you
we're
guys
doing-
are missing my point.
Okay, touch more.
My point is, we don't want the architects, the developers, and the builders to build or create development or build things that are contrary to fire smart principles. So how do we get them? So show home is not, I'm not,
I
that's
think this is
totally
what-
outdated. But how do
that's
we
where we're
get them? And that's where the communication and education, to build it right in the first place.
I don't have an answer for that. I'm starting to work with planning and the building department to make sure that there's education to, you know, the people who are applying for building permits. But I think
Or
that,
rezoning.
or rezoning, but it could be way more integrated. It would be great if someone had suggestions for how to move that forward.
Why don't you take it offline and work on it?
Okay, but for that quick wins thing, then action items underneath the, maybe it's as simple as work with the planning and building department to help educate builders and developers so
Hey,
that
Patrick.
they do it in the right way in the first place.
I don't know that you have to be here, are you? Yeah.
Oh, am I in the wrong spot?
I don't,
This is an emergency program and
Oh,
planning.
no, it's a different meeting.
Oh, okay.
Here.
Nice to see you.
Yes.
Jen, are you aware of any communities that actually, like, when you go to get a building permit or something like that, that there's like fire smart things that you have to follow to get your permit, or is there?
yeah, North Van has like development permit areas where
Yeah.
you have to meet certain
Certain.
fire smart
Okay.
principles
I thought we
and
had a
practices
conversation.
before you can even do anything.
Didn't we discuss this at one of the other meetings? We were gonna provide information, some other information, may not be fire smart, but we talked about providing that at the time of the building permit.
Yeah, the
Application.
building and resilience document
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
secondary sources of heat and power. That was
That's correct.
done, produced, and it's
Could
sitting
we,
on the.
could we have something like that with respect to this topic?
Yeah, and
Well,
we
I think
already
that
do.
might-
That already exists and it's already provided to people. So it's
Okay.
how to incorporate and ingrain this into our planning processes and our procedures. I don't.
So North Van has that for, they have an interface development permit area.
Okay.
And maybe most of our island would be an interface development permit area.
Sure.
But following up on that, under structural protection, under the quick wins. And we never actually did this, and it's not worded quite the way I thought it was.
Where are you, Alice?
I'm on number 12 now. The municipalities consider requiring roofing materials that are fire retardant or Class A or Class B rated as new subdivisions. Well, I think it should just be with new builds.
So-
And so
Roofing materials have to be fire retardant as per the building code.
the building code, okay, because that, when we were doing this back in 2007, the building code
Didn't specify.
didn't specify.
Can I make a suggestion?
Please.
Can I suggest that Jen work with a fire chief and go down and put another column in that says if things are outdated, Because what we're doing is we keep looking at things and they're not applicable anymore. And I wonder if,
But we're not reviewing this document with the sense of updating it. We're reviewing this document with the sense of what we can give to David to put in his climate action plan.
right, well,
Can I take a punch a fast suggestion here for that? I think this is a lot of detail, and I don't think we can do it justice in this discussion, because there is a lot of detail. I think there's good information in here. I'd like to take it offline and do it, and somebody do it, extract this information out of this,
Aaron and I will
work with
talk.
the fire chief, anybody who likes to do it, and then come up with something that's more appropriate, up to date, and focused.
Okay, I've got Allison and Aaron doing that.
Yeah.
Would anybody else like to participate?
So you're gonna recommend to Jen.
Yeah, we'll go through it and come up with a list for the committee to recommend to David.
Do we have any input?
and this is
into
to
that?
recommend to David for the
Climate change
climate
strategy.
change
So
strategy.
it's not David, it's EGAC.
Okay. I would be part of that, I'd like to be part of that too, so if you could put my name down on that as well.
All right.
Thank you.
Jan, you want to be part of it, you just want to receive the material?
Well, David receives it actually.
Oh, okay, you better help with that quote, is that?
Yeah.
So basically everyone in the committee except you. Nice one. Because I have a very scheduled.
Well, the point is he's got a,
Signature.
yeah, got a calendar.
I'm going on vacation. How's it going?
So we're extracting recommendations to pass on to the Environment and Climate Change Action Committee
Committee.
For the.
for inclusion in the
wildfire.
climate change
Which is
strategy under wildfire.
Yeah, I think we'll get a lot of good information.
And we'll probably have to modify the wording
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
the fact that this was 13 years ago.
And we know it's outdated and that it needs to be updated.
Well, I'm glad to hear about the fire rated roofing that's not in the building.
Good. Okay, anybody else have any more comments? Okay, hearing none, we move on. Number 5.3, I think we've talked about this ad infinitum. Jen, do you have any sort of wrap up on this?
Beautiful.
Self-assessment too?
After receiving feedback from Raiden that she wanted the side-by-side comparison of 2017 to now, I produced this little Excel spreadsheet. So page 14,
I thought that was great.
Yeah, great.
hopefully that makes it easier for everyone.
No, that'll be fine.
There were a couple that had actually gone down. Again, I wish I had my computer, but you'll notice
Here.
in 2019, there were the occasional one.
Oh, that's the ones I've got 1-4 and 1-5. Because I circled those, I think I've got a big question mark because we.
Right. So does it include the, yes, it did. We had the Managemet committee and now we've gotten rid of it. So that changed from a yes to a no. Has the committee been appointed? Yes, they had, but now they aren't. Because it
Well, I
just-
thought that said it's the Bylaw Authority and Emergency Planning Committee. So that, was that what you
The
called the
Management
emergency
Committee,
Okay. But are they different?
Or what different?
Well, what's the province's definition of emergency planning committee?
The Management committee.
So why didn't we call it planning?
We didn't. At the time.
It is weird though, because it's their
Mhm.
template.
They
that had
did
it.
that. So
Yeah,
I was
Yeah.
we
stuck
just
with
followed
it,
the
yeah.
name that they had.
Okay, so it's 0 now because we disbanded.
Yeah.
Okay. So, our, okay. And then, I had a problem with, I hate when you recognize it. I think it's 1-14.
I like all these ones that went way up.
That went way up.
Yeah.
And then,
114, am I employed full-time?
Oh,
Yeah, and we got 0. There's no in between because you're part-time.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's something to just raise with
Their
the program,
scoring.
because for
Yeah.
small communities,
Yeah, they're not gonna have.
they're not gonna have a full-time person, but they should get some points for having a part-time person.
yes.
We should get points just for going through this process.
So, at the end, did you fill out this list?
should we
Yeah.
recommend that the chair write to emergency VC, no?
I don't think so. This tool is so dated. If they're gonna update anything, it needs to be the whole,
Okay.
I think that's correct.
And they're in this huge process of modernizing all sorts of aspects of it and injecting all this funding. Like, I would be surprised
Yeah,
because
no,
Be-
okay.
Because it was, I mean, it was, if it was something that was that important, then we could,
and because it's a self-assessment, like, we're not sending it to them.
Is
for-
this, what do we
It's
have?
for grading.
65 points.
Jan,
Yeah.
what do we do with this? What, I mean,
it's,
It's
Information,
just, this committee is supposed to, you know, set the strategic direction of the program and track the progress over time of what the emergency program is achieving. So this is just one tool
It's-
for
it's a-
helping the committee do
Okay.
It's a
that.
template to help us do it.
And so I guess the issue has, the reason it's being presented in this form is because we've struggled to sort of all agree that this is a good, like, an appropriate an accurate snapshot of the situation. Resolve that we accept it and move forward. I think this was to try and avoid going through item by item as a group.
Okay, and can we ask where I have some questions?
Ed, we got a question?
Yeah,
Okay.
too bad, no. Have the results from the HRB used, 2-2, have the results of the hazard risk and vulnerability been used to improve the emergency program? And you said yes. But I'm just wondering
It's
what specifics?
No, it's not really black and white. The fact that the HRBA is so often cited by like staff working is a real
Okay.
form for me of progress.
yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's an indicator of the fact that it is useful. It has been used. So we used it in developing the evacuation plan,
Yeah.
for example. But other staff from other departments have actually used it in their work as well. So that was sort of part of what led me to that, but we have started actioning some of the recommendations from that HRBA.
Yeah.
So
So do we have a hazard risk and vulnerability advisory committee?
we did when we developed it.
Oh,
I don't think I called them
okay,
an
but,
advisory committee.
okay, because that's questions 2.2 and 2.3, and you've answered yes. Because the next one says, has a hazard risk and vulnerability advisory committee completed? They've done the hazard risk analysis.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And like I said, yes, because we did use that toolkit when we went through.
Okay.
We did have a committee when we updated.
And do we have a work plan in this? So the work plan and the schedule you're referring to here is actually developing the report.
No, the HR,
I'm talking about 2-4-1.
there's also a work plan developed, or an action plan developed out of the HRBA itself.
Which is, that's 2.4.
No, I think you're right. I think the 4.1 was referring to the schedule to
Okay,
update the
yeah, I was just
HRBA.
trying to understand. Okay, and then 2-4-9 says finalized action plans for inclusion in the strategic plan.
Because we don't.
But council has a strategic plan, so is there anything, where do I find the finalized action plan from the HRBA?
So in the back of the HRBA are the recommendations.
Yeah.
So.
They haven't been turned into a formal action plan, and they aren't, as far as I know, on the strategic planning radar.
Are there things that should be?
I think so.
Well, so,
Are you coming to the strategic plan?
do you want to bring that with you, and we might want to look at that?
Which is gonna be part of our workshop.
I know, so I'm just
Okay.
saying we might want to have a quick look at that before the meeting.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So I find all of that in the back of the hazard risk and vulnerabilities, which is on the website, right? Yes, okay. Then
Want to
we-
make that an action then?
I don't know, was that an action item?
I think just go to the committee meeting and be prepared.
Well, we're having a council
Workshop.
managers workshop on the strategic plan, so
Are you guys going to meet beforehand?
we should probably have, at least have a look at it and decide if there's anything we want to raise.
Having
I
not gone
think
through.
We've
Between
got
the
staff
three of
who's
us,
gonna
yeah.
bring that information to
Yeah.
the workshop,
Yeah,
within her brain.
yeah.
So when is that workshop?
February 24th,
Next week,
I believe.
Good.
Yeah.
I'm gonna live here next Monday, bring my sleeping bag. Yeah.
It's a
Okay, so
long day.
then 3-2, have the results of the hazard risk and vulnerability analysis been shared with the community to increase awareness and preparedness? the sharing's on our website, right?
We did a tiny public information campaign as
Yeah.
well at the time to let people know it was there. I actually received feedback from members of the
Yeah.
public about the HRV.
Yeah, they read it,
It's great.
they were looking at
A
it.
couple people.
Well, I guess I'm thinking,
And then in terms of like,
ongoing
Can we
awareness.
let Jen finish?
I was finishing my question.
she, in terms of the second part, to increase awareness and preparedness to help
Yeah.
with risk reduction, I think the Fire Smart program is probably one of the like clearer examples of where we're doing that. There's still a lot more we could be doing.
Are there any parts of this that concern you, or that you think we as a committee should be paying attention to?
There's so much happening right now that I'm sure there are, but I don't have the capacity to address it anyway.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
because of the pace of work right now, I think that there's enough progress being made that no, I don't have any
Yeah.
specific concerns. There's
Yeah.
so much more we could be doing, but
Yeah.
And also, any further questions?
Yeah, I got a few more, sorry about that. So on, under 3.5 and 3.6, have identified risk reduction actions, items been prioritized based upon the legal requirements, degree of risk control, cost and formed, and that sounds like we haven't done anything there.
yeah.
And then appropriate building construction standards, and that's a no. But if the building code's been changed, is there things, do we need to worry about that, or?
I'm thinking about like even our fire hall, like
Yeah.
Like, we can't do things above the building code anyways, right? We
Yeah.
can't tell people they have to do things that
that's
are
beyond,
outside
yeah.
the building
I'm just
code
thinking like
anyways.
and structures at risk relocated or retrofitted.
No, I wasn't even thinking about that part.
No, we know we have a structure at risk, we know it's critical, we haven't, so I don't know. These are subjective,
What,
3.6.
3.6.
Yeah.
Can I,
Go ahead.
regarding 3.5,
Mhm.
some of those identified risks are showing up in the asset management work that's being done. So they're talking about flooding, and they're talking about, is it an urgent risk, or is it a low priority risk, and that kind of thing. So there's a whole bunch of risk identification and management stuff happening in the asset management program.
Good.
So just so the committee knows.
Oh, thank you.
So maybe we should ask the asset management program if, for our assets, if they're looking at them on the basis of risk in case of wildfire.
It's not our only hazard.
But that's the major hazard from the hazard risk and vulnerability assessment, an earthquake. And I think they would naturally think about it from an earthquake perspective, but I'm not sure that they would think about it from a wildfire
Oh,
perspective.
it's probably top of mind right now.
Well, it is
Why is
for us,
that?
but it's not for Rock Island.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And used to big cities
No,
and
you're
stuff
right.
like that.
Is
So
there some way, should we ask for an update of what's happening in that?
I think they just, they gave council a committee of the whole within the past few months, wasn't it?
yeah. we-
And so, if
An
you look
update.
in there, there was a good presentation, tons of slides.
But I can't
And, I
remember
think that
if
would be
he
the easy
said
place to take
what
it.
he was
Okay.
assessing them on the basis of. I mean, I know
I think it was.
rate, age and life and when they're gonna have to be replaced. But was he looking at them from the perspective of risk from earthquake and wildfire?
Is that something that could be extracted?
Well, we
So
can
we
just-
could see that, those
I think
slides?
maybe if Jen takes a look at it,
We
I'm
can-
pretty sure flooding was in there, so maybe there were other risks as well.
Yeah.
I'm just putting it out there for the,
But, yeah, flooding's the one that everybody's worried about.
And we
because
shouldn't
of
have
the
to tell them this.
dikes
This is why we produced the HRVA. Please go read it. Or
Yeah,
at least
well,
read
I
the top
guess I
hazards
just-
and make sure that
I'm
you
just
account
wanting
for
to
them.
make sure,
Yeah.
it was a jog to me that,
Yeah.
is it?
so the reason I'm bringing up the asset management plan is also just if you could make sure that the asset manager consultants have our HRVs.
Yeah,
That's
exactly. That's what I'm
basically-
saying,
so-
yeah.
So who did that, the consultant, who did they report to?
Raj.
Raj.
Raj, I think.
CFO?
So he's
Yeah.
our CFO,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and so that's who the asset management program is beginning under. So this is,
Okay.
we're still at the identifying and figuring out what assets we have and what the risks associated with them are. So that's where I'm making sure that our energy program coordinator knows that that's going on and that they can connect. Yeah, thank
Okay,
you.
that's good. That's
Yeah.
good.
Okay. The rest of them are sort of just little, did I send you a question with respect to that email last night?
Not to my knowledge.
That's not what I sent. Oh, yes, I did. Oh, it was the island survey.
Oh,
No. Okay,
Is that it, Allison?
yeah,
Okay. Well, that was actually quite good.
that was fine.
Good,
Okay, good.
good detail, that level of detail is very
I
important.
think we're gonna try to get a little recommendation out of this one. The council was, are you done? Yeah, that the committee recommend that council receive the community emergency program review for information.
oh,
This is all information for council. Maybe the 2017 and 2019
yeah, the
CEPR
little.
at the years. Sure. 2017, so they can get the,
Yeah, I move that.
Secondly, Councilor Morse, all in favor? Good.
Thank you. Good idea, Steph.
Okay, so we won't see that one back on the agenda for a couple
yeah,
years
just
now.
send it to
I've had enough of that.
council. Say goodbye.
No, the questions were interesting and it makes you think more about what I,
It does,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
good.
okay.
Okay, item 5.4. Fire hydrants and firefighting capacity. Some information coming from the local area water districts.
Well, I guess it came up through the water committees, and I think it came up with, so, we might have talked about it a little bit at a previous meeting last fall, I think maybe. The fire underwriters survey, they've come out and they tested everybody's hydrants in all the public systems, but that was a number of years ago.
Is that in the fire
It's-
underwriter survey,
yes,
like
if
the
you-
actual results of
If you
each
go and
hydrant?
look in the back and they rated each of the systems as to whether they had the adequate flow or not.
Oh, but it doesn't give the actual info, it just grades it.
No, it doesn't tell you what the actual flow is, but it says.
It grades every hydrant as an A or a B or something like that.
Well, A and B is your area, but they did actually, because then they left out all the private water systems, even though the muni paid for the whole thing.
Right.
So we paid for it.
So we can- okay.
And so I grumbled at Brian, and they came out and did all the private systems too. So, like the Blue Water's hydrants don't meet the flow because they've got too small a line.
Mhm.
So they tested that you had the adequate flow so that you could provide so many gallons per minute for so many minutes.
Yeah.
So that's so that's been done.
Yeah.
Now, recently,
When
and
was that? A long time ago?
yeah, but
2013.
Well,
well, it was updated in 2013.
So people go-
And then every time, I think, every time the guys come out to service the hydrants, I'm not sure, I know they do a flow test on ours when they come out, but.
see, I've only ever received a report just saying that they've serviced the hydrant,
Exactly.
not that
Yeah,
any report
so
of any
whether
kind.
they actually measure the flow.
Oh,
But there was a recent test done, and I'm not sure about some of the the flow for the commercial lines, whether there's a long enough length of flow. And then we've got our subdivision servicing bylaw, which for new developments requires hydrants to be able to have a certain amount of flow for a certain period of time. Pressure, yeah, so, the fire underwriter survey, I think.
So where do you want to go with this?
Well, I don't know, I
think
don't,
it's very important, but.
I think Erin was saying that there might be some upcoming flow testing happening anyway.
Well, I would like to think that there is, so part of the people doing the core review of the fire department have said that needs to be done. Really, we should be able to have a booklet that tells every hydrant the pressure,
oh, okay.
the flow that you would get out of it, the sustained flow, and then as well the volume that would be accessible from that hydrant. So there's really three things that we've
So
been
you
looking
need
for.
to know which.
And as far as
hydrants to-
I know, we don't have any of that information. Because
No.
as you say, even the underwriter's survey may have said that the hydrant is rated as maybe a good hydrant or whatever, but that still doesn't give us the actual info.
You don't have the actual flow out of,
Right.
out of each hydrant. And I only know about our system. And we
But you know where all the hydrants are.
Yes.
Oh, yes, yeah, we have a good map of where all of
They,
that are.
they were GIS mapped by,
Yeah.
years ago by a summer student.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that something, I think you need that information, don't you?
Well,
Yeah,
then,
well, I think so, and the core review people are saying we should absolutely have that information, so.
so just because FUS said that this is a 3A or 3B area, they didn't.
I've never seen anything that tells us any specifics on their behind.
So it'd be interesting to ask them for their methodology,
Mm,
if they tested all the hydrants, because
exactly.
I think Blue Water, if you look at Blue Water, it may be broken up.
Punch
Right.
the fast.
I was thinking that now in an era of climate change with longer, drier summers and more extreme storm events that could bring down power lines and things like that, or cause other kinds of emergencies, that might need hydrants, that it's even more important that you have the info that you need.
Absolutely,
And,
yeah.
and so with, I know Jen's capacity is probably tapped out, but there is also funding available through climate action kinds of funding nowadays. And so if there was another grant that you wanted to get involved in through the fire department or something like that, I would just recommend you talk to Councillor Hawking first about what grants might be available for climate action through Metro Vancouver, and then maybe there's other ones as well. But just to start collecting this, because you can't just count on old information nowadays.
No.
Yeah.
And so
I think you should be working with the Public Works and the engineering group.
Well, that's ultimately who would be undertaking that. The fire department, we like to have the info, but that's not something we are gonna,
I think you need to.
the public works needs to get the
Get
flow
the
tests
info?
done and all that kind of stuff.
Patrick, we need to call back.
Well, I think they did it as part of the Code Bay flushing.
So does this committee want to request the council request staff do that work?
No, I think it sounds like it's being done through the fire services review, so.
Well, they're just gonna make recommendations.
Yeah, but there's a
But
recommendation.
once they make the
No, there's
recommendations,
a
then
So that
recommendation.
Council
recommendation
will
will
have to-
come.
So let's.
Oh,
wait-
absolutely, yeah.
Let's wait till they make their recommendation, and then we could,
Yep.
if we need, we can
I
support.
think we should put in our minutes that we feel it's important that this information is done and provided to the fire department.
that would be great, yeah.
I think we feel it's necessary.
Like as an action, as a resolution?
Well,
Make it a
it's just
resolution.
Okay.
I don't want
I-
a
Committee
recommendation,
resolves
but I want
this is important.
Well,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
sort of,
we gotta have something that
Just
says,
the-
we say it's
Could we
important.
say that the Emergency Program Executive Committee looks forward to, no. We're not resolving to do anything. So-
agrees that having information on the flow for each individual hydrant would be useful.
I'd say it's critical.
Each
Is
individual.
Is important, how about that?
Agreed. It says important, but I think it's critical. But anyway.
Well, I hear you saying recommended that this information is included in the,
No, we're not.
No,
No,
but
no,
we
we
don't
can't
want to
provide it
down
just to
the
them.
Just say how the
in terms
information is
of reference
important to
for
the
all
fire
of that,
department.
so.
it's really like a clubhouse.
Bracket.
We all agree this is important.
Well, it's there that
I think
we,
we've brought it to
I agree,
attention.
absolutely.
we flagged it.
Totally. We'll talk to Patrick later.
Okay, we're on 6.1.
Number
No, we're gonna vote.
It's just a statement you're putting in the minutes, it's
Just,
not a motion.
there's no vote recommendation or anything, it's just a comment. Updates. Staff update, Jennifer.
It's
attached.
provided on table.
Yep.
Do you want me to go through line by line?
Is there anything you want to highlight to us?
That $182,000 in grants has been secured. We did just get our first denial, so it's possible that more of those are forthcoming.
You push what?
We got
Turned down for
turned
one.
down for a
Turned down?
grant.
This is the first time? So this is like.
1 out of 8
Yeah.
But which one was it that got?
for the fire hall, for the fire department's training and equipment.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. Shoot. Yeah.
So it's possible that we start to see that happen more often, especially because one of the criteria for funding is having not received funding in the past, which we have.
Yeah, so we're starting to,
I think we were
Look
maybe
less-
yeah,
a little earlier and a little more prepared than some of the other smaller communities.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah.
we're catching up.
Fire hall.
There are lots of communities hiring right now because of this funding.
So the $182,000 in grants was since when?
Since 2017,
Yeah.
so 2 years.
So the pending in 2020, is that still pending? Is that still
I
valid?
will for sure be applying for $75,000 more and potentially 100 depending on when the announcement comes.
For what?
So same things, there's one underway, or an application already submitted for the final sort of ESS supplies that they require.
Yeah.
We're gonna apply for another EOC grant. There's one we're currently spending. We have 2 Fire Smart grants underway, and we currently have an evacuation underway, and we'll be applying for another one. So,
And these are provincial?
yeah,
Any federal?
none of these are federal.
No.
There is federal
Got it.
funding available. It's, the last one I saw was for like massive capital projects, so
Yeah,
it wasn't applicable. I haven't seen any.
okay.
So the ones you're applying for, or you will be applying for, are ESS supplies?
EOC, training and equipment.
That's the application submitted February 14th.
That's the ESS one was submitted February 14th. The EOC one will be submitted in mid-March.
Yeah.
Oh, I see it there,
Yeah.
okay, thank
And
you.
then evacuation, we'll be applying for
Gotcha.
another evacuation grant
Okay.
in late March.
Good, thank you.
And then the NERPs, I guess that's another sort of area of,
How many do you want? Like 50?
I think Edward's goal is way more than that.
I was going to say, if you think of all the number of neighborhoods and he wanted smaller pockets within
Yeah.
those, 50 isn't going to
No,
cut.
he wanted like each person to be responsible for 10 houses. That would be about 360 volunteers. So we'll see.
Is it ambitious?
It's good to have ambitious
Volunteers?
goals. Yes. But the volunteers that he has recruited are quite committed and engaged, and they have a big event coming up on the 29th, sort of their kickoff. What do we want this program to look like?
Great.
Yeah.
29th of this month.
Correct.
A one every 4-year meeting. A leap day.
Right, yeah. And then, yeah, just ongoing staff training and project meetings.
So is there a new person in North Shore Emergency Management?
I don't believe they've hired a director yet.
Okay, good.
And then the other side is just potential and confirmed projects for this year. There's a lot of documents in draft form that I want to finalize and push out this year, so I anticipate that happening.
You're so busy.
It's been really busy, yeah.
Can I,
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
just looking at the risk management slides, and they include things like earthquakes, accidents, fire, flood, that kind of thing. So these are start at slide number 12 on the slides that I sent you.
Oh, okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Is that it, Jen?
That's it for me, unless anyone has a question.
Anybody got any more questions on that?
No, it's great.
I think it's pretty well laid out there. Thank you.
And the projects are all neatly organized on the back. I like that. Just-
Yeah.
So I keep track of what I'm up to.
Yeah.
How many days per week are you working now?
Sorry?
How many days per week?
It really varies. I should look at what I think the average is still around 25 hours a week,
25 hours.
but I'm usually either here sort of 30 hours or I'm out of the country.
Yeah.
Okay, fine.
Oh,
Fine.
this thing is
6.2?
I had a question
Oh,
for
sorry.
Jen on
Okay.
that. Not the on plan. Sorry, no, 6.2.
Evacuation plan,
Oh,
okay.
right, I missed that.
Sorry, Alice, was your question
No.
on a different subject?
Well, I sent Jen in some comments and you had the exercise and stuff, so yeah, I was at
Okay.
7.2 instead of 6.2.
All right.
So I got a lot, so we're on 6.2.
Yep.
I got a lot of feedback on the draft from staff and members of this committee, and yeah. So this was validated through an exercise just 2 weeks ago. We had about 22
Yeah, I saw the photo.
participants. Yeah, there were photos.
22 people?
I think so, yeah. And I talk about that on here somewhere. So we completed the exercise.
Evacuation plan, exercise completed.
I thought I put the number of, oh yeah, staff training and development. Evacuation tabletop exercise conducted in February, 23 participants, including staff, volunteers, and reps from BC Ferries, NSCM, RCMP, and Metro Vancouver.
Nice.
Yeah, it went well. Lots of learnings that we tried to capture. I gather the consultants actually aren't writing an after-action report as part of their scope of work, so I'll take that on to make sure that they're all captured for the future. And the staff did really well, considering it's not what they signed up for when they applied for their jobs. Yeah, it went great.
It was excellent. It was, can I talk?
Yeah, go ahead.
So they had, when you're doing tabletops, they say, okay, you need to call and get a tow truck, or you need to get some fuel, and you go, okay, I'm calling now. They actually gave us phone numbers, and there's someone sitting upstairs in Jen's office, and they gave us an email address.
So much more real.
So you'd say, okay, I need 2 buses. They say, where do you need it? I need one on the corner of this, one on the corner of that. I can only get you one. And then people are asking you, but you're like, just a sec, I don't have my answer yet. I can't, there are actual answers. You're filling out the form, and they're actually giving you the gears. Like poor Sophie, with her, the media was harassing her, and she's like trying to go to a manager's debrief meeting, and she's like, just pretty frazzled because it was just like, just a sec. Yeah, no. And how do you handle these harassing media?
So who was doing
The simulated mayor was a real pain in the butt.
But he was a real man.
I'm sure Gary wouldn't be that.
Oh, it was scary. I thought they'd actually called him.
No.
Yeah.
That
it
was one of the learnings, though. Was
So the phone numbers you called, you
Can
had a live person on the
can I-
end? Was it from the consultants who
Yeah.
brought in a live person?
Yeah. And on the email. It's crazy.
So they had two, they're the two sort of regular consultants we frequently work with, and they were down here in the room, and then they brought 2 of their colleagues who acted as the simulators from.
And how long things actually take?
Yeah, I was there for
Like, it
half of the
takes
day.
a
I
bit of
had to go in the
time.
afternoon, but yeah, it was really good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
well
Well,
done.
that's great.
The staff seemed to really like it, so they wanted, do one every year, which would be a huge
Every
undertaking.
year, like every 6 months.
Yeah. So
It's
it's
really good.
not recognizing the cost involved.
Well, no, then we thought about getting like other volunteers, could be the people on the phone or the email. It's just a Gmail address and someone's phone number, and I guess the cost.
No, it's good that everyone's so keen.
Was Patrick here by then?
He wasn't, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah.
We have to, there was, Rachel was here from Public Works.
Yeah.
We have to address some of the things that need to be addressed before we can do it again. So the next sort of 6 months to a year will be spent making it better for next time.
Yeah. Well, we did one many, many years ago. We had a long disaster fire, and I remember some of us from council that we had to make the decision to have
You
somebody's
did not
house
build some
demolished.
I would love to have council involved. I think it would be a good experience for them as well. Not in the EOC.
I
but
thought that was part of it,
playing
was
their
like
role.
handling council was part of it.
It probably would be. Yeah, because the press would be on to council
Yeah.
members as well.
Mhm. And the public.
There it is.
Yeah.
So we
you
had
have a
some
question?
experience with handling some.
No.
Do you have a question?
Okay.
So the
Thank you.
evacuation, sorry, the plan itself, I'm meeting with the consultants tomorrow to talk about finalization, incorporating all of this and producing a final draft
Excellent.
in the very near future, because we're running out of time in terms of the grant deadline.
This is the evacuation plan final version.
And I
So in
will
the next few
translate my
weeks.
handwriting for her this
Yeah.
morning.
Anytime, any day now. Okay.
Now, that's good, that's item 6.2.
Yep, final version imminent.
Yeah.
Great.
7, information items, 2019 item plan.
This is what we're gonna be updating on, later this month. Yeah, Monday, right.
Yeah. Looking at where we're at and whether there's updates or changes needed or whatever. Yeah. But this,
Not
And
that,
then-
okay.
it was the survey was the one I
Yeah.
had questions on.
Okay.
This is so slow. So the staff report or the presentation?
Well, the actual survey results.
I think it's in the staff report, in the appendix.
Yeah. There were questions related to emergency management, so I don't know if there's anything in those questions that we need to be concerned about or addressing. The
I
didn't go.
Maybe that should have been a discussion topic, not just an item.
Yeah. Well,
I didn't analyze it the same way that I did last time it was produced. I don't know if you remember the, I
The
tried to.
communications team asked you to do it last time. Right?
No, it was for us specifically, the emergency
Program
management
stuff.
Yeah.
and related questions
Yeah,
specifically.
well, we didn't have that much information, we were trying to think about how would we do our communications and things.
keep going.
I would really like to do some kind of public response to some of the comments and questions, you know, like
Yeah,
your
there's a whole
questions
list of
answered and the
questions.
undercurrent, et cetera, but I just don't have time.
Yeah.
I haven't had time.
So, let's see, the house outage.
I like the fact that we're focusing on these priority things and getting the evacuation plan out, and you've got the HRVA out, and those are like the big things, the big gaps we need to fill.
What section was it? I know I missed it up at the top maybe.
No, I thought all the detailed questions were.
We actually included the relevant ones as a
There it is.
attachment.
There we go, emergency
Previous.
preparedness.
Okay.
Does your household have the following? What, are those both the same, the column headings, the blue and the green?
Blue is
2008.
2018 and green is 2019.
Oh, that's 19, okay. Well, so 19, there's less people.
Are you familiar with, is that what that's asking?
Fire smart.
Yeah, but does your house have a secondary water supply?
Oh, that's,
Of the respondents,
Yeah.
fewer people had a rain catchment system than the previous time? Rain barrels, maybe?
I don't know. Secondary heat source was less too, which was interesting. Fire smart, are you familiar with? I mean, look at, the year before, it was 66%, and this year it was 33.
Yeah, we don't know.
no,
if this-
in 2018, only 30% were familiar with FireSmart. In 2019, over 66% were familiar with
So the
FireSmart.
blue is 19?
No,
I'm just looking at the numbers, not the graph.
I'm looking at the numbers.
this is 2018. this
Okay,
is
so are you
2019.
familiar with FireSmart? In 2018, 66% of people said yes.
Sorry, 2018, yes, is there. This is 2019, even though it's not.
Oh, I
Ah.
Yeah.
Oh, why?
It's got column headings up above, so that was what was confusing me. Okay.
So that is a
Oh,
good
good, yes, no.
improvement. Twice as many people
Yeah, that makes sense.
know the word now.
Okay, okay.
And the steps to improve your home from 30 to 50.
Yeah.
You know, half of respondents have done something.
Okay, so it's the
These
29,
I
the
still
bottom
don't-
one we need to look at then, so fire extinguisher. Yeah, okay. Okay, so an evacuation order, this is the one,
Q25 at the bottom.
yeah, can you keep going up, 25, 26? Are you able to self-evacuate now by private boat? Well, that's, I would expect a large no.
I was surprised that 20% could.
Yeah.
Like, that was higher than my
Yeah.
expectation, and we will put these into the evacuation plan.
But
It's
if you're
possible.
not able to self-evacuate, I guess,
Again, it was a surprise that 25% of people plan on going by foot.
So a lot of Cove
Yeah.
residents are the ones who filled out the
Right.
survey.
Respondents.
I'm suggesting to Jen that the idea of the multi-use plan, the multi-use pathway and trails and shortcuts through neighborhoods, you know, when you get from the senator over to.
Yeah.
but 66% with a vehicle, I mean, that's just, I guess in my mind, totally, if it was an island-wide evacuation, totally impossible to deal with. When we
Not
have,
impossible.
no, but we have
It's
so
the war of
many,
the world.
so many other places, and I guess that's where it's getting the evacuation plan. I mean, where you could put other things into places like Kate's Bay and Thompson Bay and, you know, stuff like that, where people could be evacuated different ways. than
So
on
we have
the ferry.
Echo,
Yeah.
our exercise, we're evacuating Echo.
Okay.
What do you mean, Echo?
Echo Bay.
Echo Bay is where we left during our realistic exercise.
Oh, you left by that day, okay.
Echo Cove. That's
Echo Cove.
I was going, what is Echo Bay?
I know, I don't even
Your
know.
exercise was on my way, you didn't invite me.
You were evacuated.
Not to worry, Allison.
I'm just gonna go down and sit on the rocks with a wet blanket.
And a martini.
We'll know where to find you.
Some pearls.
Well, if it's pouring rain, the wind's blowing from the southeast, we're not gonna have an issue. If it's blowing from the west, they can come and get me from the waterfront.
Don't get your blanket wet until you leave.
Okay, good. Well, that's very interesting, thank you, Stephanie. Next meeting?
Oh, let's do it. So this is Tuesday, 9 works, okay?
That was it.
So let's go.
They don't change the ferry schedule again at a certain point?
Yeah.
They do.
Yeah.
So we're looking at May?
Yeah.
Say,
21st.
That sounds like a problem.
That's it. Thursday,
Um,
right?
May the
sorry.
19th?
19th would be Tuesday, the 19th,
I
yeah.
can come weekend around there.
Somewhere the Monday is.
That is it.
Victoria Day is the 18th.
Yeah.
I can't come on the 19th, I'll be on Penryn.
What about the 26th?
I can't come.
But we'll even have.
21st.
26th you can come? No,
I can come on the 21st.
How do you feel about a Thursday?
it's okay.
We're
That's summertime,
right in
so-
May, aren't we?
That, I've nothing.
We're
So
looking
you'll
at
be
May
here.
21st.
May 21st is Thursday. Let's set that for tentatively? Yeah?
Yep.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
9 o'clock?
Say 9 o'clock?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, let me check that.
9 o'clock on the 21st.
Just check the ferry schedule. Because if it changes, well, there's still, I think it still goes around 8 in the morning.
He's going to be on
I
Bowen.
need to,
Oh, you're on Bowen, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
Yeah,
probably,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
right.
Thank you, Chair.
So shall we call adjournment?
Yeah?
Yep.
Do you want me to drive it down?
Thank you.
I need to just,
Oh, okay.
pay a visit for a second.
Oh, okay, more than we need to know. I was,
You cold?
you shouldn't have the, well, the blinds are open up.
Well, because we had to see the screen.
It's warped.
So,
Okay.
is the